Uncertainty creates opportunities. Opportunities create value. Today, we're breaking down the most ambiguous backfields in fantasy football. I'm joined by my good friend, mentor, Bob Harris, and I'm thrilled that Bob would come in here and be able to talk about football. We were talking pre-show about how fast everything's going. We are heading towards the barrel towards training camp, and I wanted to start with New England's backfield. And what we're seeing right now, we've got TreVeyon Henderson versus Ramondre Stevenson. We're obviously this is the Dynasty show. We're looking a little bit from the Dynasty lens. We're going to look from the redraft lens as well. But Henderson, running back 14 in Dan Hendry's trade value chart. Stevenson's running back 35 in that same ranking. Redraft, Henderson's running back 21. Stevenson's running back 31. Where are you coming down on this Patriots backfield?
I think it depends on where you're at in your dynasty build. Obviously, Henderson seems like the better long-term play, but you're paying for that. I think the redraft numbers are probably about right to me, and as will often be the case in redraft, I will be drafting the cheaper option. Henderson, running back 21, Stevenson, running back 31. We saw a much closer finish. I did a hot take on Howard Bender's show, the Alarm Show, last Friday when we were drafting, and they wanted a hot take. My hot take was that Ramondre Stevenson has a better season than TreVeyon Henderson. I just don't see TreVeyon Henderson ever getting the full workload as long as Ramondre Stevenson's there. So that's not a permanent condition either. So in Dynasty, I'm probably going to be more interested in Henderson in general. But do I know that he's ever going to be like a dominant feature back, a lead guy that's going to get that workload? No, but in the 3 games without Henderson last year, he was pretty dominant, right? Those were his 3 best games. And all the super high end 20 plus point scoring outputs in all 3 of those games. But those were his 3 games. So I think that's kind of the thing for me. If I'm playing in the shorter term, and I've talked about this a lot. I mean, I was on with Alan Zaslowski from RotoWire, and we were talking. I have a tendency to draft older guys in startup drafts, right? Because I'm not afraid of them, especially at running back. They're rentals, right? They're just 1 or 2 year guys. So I think if you have a solid player that's going at a better value, there's going to be another train leaving that station next year and the year after and the year after. You're going to be able to reload at running back. So that's one position where I think I'm tending to take the cheaper piece in this backfield in particular. It's the
I definitely I think I've changed my way that I view fantasy football, and I think that you're a big credit to that. And like this year, I'm looking at to me like Cortland Sutton seems like a screaming value to me right now, and I don't understand what everybody's doing with this, and so things like that. But at some point in the dynasty lens, we really need to be looking at this with Henderson. I guess best case scenario would be the Jahmyr Gibbs outcome, where it just gets to a point where Henderson is clearly better than Stevenson. I don't know that that's in play in the way that we drafted these players last year. TreVeyon Henderson, where we drafted him last year in our rookie drafts. I mean, you're looking at really struggling to return value on Henderson. At what point are you worried about getting out on Henderson versus holding and hoping that you are going to get that elite upside?
I think if you're looking to get out of it, you're going to want to do it now, right? Because another season where he comes up short of expectations. Look, it's set up just like last year. I mean, we're looking at the numbers. I think the ADPs are very similar, at least in redraft, and probably less so in Dynasty. I think probably there was a little more buzz around Henderson. That's dying down a little bit. But I think now is the time to make that move, because another bad season, you're not going to get anything in return, or you're going to get minimal in return. And maybe people will look at it and say, oh, well, Stevenson is, at the tail end. Maybe there's something there, and maybe you can still get some value out of him. But I think, I do think that as long as there is a Stevenson, this is going to be a limited role. And why? Because I don't see why Mike Vrabel changes his approach. I was looking at what are the numbers. Last year, Henderson was drafted running back 18. So this year, it was a 4th round price. This year, going slightly cheaper than that. Stevenson was going as running back 37. He's a little more expensive this year. I think they're about the right price. But for me, the righter price is easily Stevenson at that. Stevenson was Henderson was running back 25 on a points per game basis last year. Henderson was. Stevenson was running back 22. So he did outperform him last year. So on a points per game basis. So there was some missed time. But yeah, I do think, again, in Dynasty, it's a whole different, you're taking a different approach. And some of this is going to depend on where you're at. I know in this year's Football Guys Draft Guide, 2026 edition, you write about the life cycles of teams, and that's a big part of this, is right, like deciding where your team is at. And it's something that I tend to struggle at. It's hard for me to admit that, hey, it's time to let go and rebuild. And once you get to that point, you have to race to be the worst team, right? Because that's how the rebuild works. And so so I do think that there's, that where you're at in the cycle of your team is going to depend on which of these players you are
Well,
more
and really
appealing
the
to.
out that you're looking for with Henderson would be contingent upside that should Stevenson miss time, but then that
Correct.
same exists for Stevenson as well. Should Henderson miss time, you're looking at potential top 12 running back in that high upside with the Patriots offense that we did see with Drake May last year. But we're going to move on. But before we do, make sure to like, subscribe, do all those fun things on YouTube. It really does help us a lot when you help us share the word in our community. Next up, Jacksonville. And this is one that everybody is talking about with Bashal Tutin, Chris Rodriguez, LaQuint Allen. Tutin is running back 22 in Dan Hendry's trade value chart. Plus, Rodriguez is running back 63. Allen is running back 76. At ADP, Tutin is running back 25. In redraft ADP, Tutin's 25. Rodriguez is running back 44. Allen is running back 85. And to me, breaking this down, I want Bob. First, I would like you to break it down because I can share my opinion after yours.
Well, I think the prices are about right. Yeah, I like the redraft ADP a lot better. Like the Tootin at running back 25, you're not paying a premium for opportunities that don't exist yet, or a role that doesn't exist yet, but that one that we expect. Rodriguez, we all know the connection to Liam Cohn. Just coming off my first serious fantasy radio show of the year, the Diehards with Mike Dempsey, who is in Jacksonville. We talked about this backfield, and one of the outcomes that he discussed was the possibility this is just a messy three-headed monster all year long, and that seems possible. Allen, look, if you're thinking Trevor Lawrence is ascending and you want to keep him going, you want to have the best pass blocker on the field, we may see some LaQuint Allen. I don't know that he's draft worthy for me. I think that tail end price, he's definitely of more interest in Dynasty to me than in redraft. But I think Rodriguez is the wild card here. His connection to Liam Cohen from their time together at Kentucky, and the fact that they went out and got him and didn't pay him a non-consequential amount of cash to show up. The X factor there is the broken foot he suffered. I think it was his very first practice with the team, and he had surgery, had it fixed. So we'll have to watch that in training camp. But again, I think these guys are priced correctly. I do think Tutin's longer term value. He's the longer term, better long term play in Dynasty. But we're betting on a ton of upside that, like a lot of everything we think about Bashal Tutin comes from his scouting combine numbers, and not a ton of it from what he's done on the field. But there have been moments of, I want to say, that create optimism. I mean, we saw him, look, the 4.3 speed. I'm a sucker for all that. 13th in backs with carries with at least 70 carries and yards after contact per attempt. So there were some numbers to like against Buffalo in the playoffs. He had 3 straight runs of 20, 14, and 13 yards. I mean, we're close. And also, Liam Cohen tends to get the most out of running backs. We can go to Tampa Bay with Bucky Irving. We can go last year to Travis Etienne. He does. I think our friend Pat Fitzmaurice over Fantasy Pros called him a rainmaker for running backs. So somebody here is going to benefit. If I'm betting right now, I'm probably betting on Tutin because I think the price is fair. And if it's a longer term play, I'm also betting on the youth and athleticism.
Yeah, I think that it is interesting because we're either seeing two different trends emerge in the league where we're seeing bell cow situations that we're getting a lot more than what we've had the last handful of years, or we're getting these three-headed messy committees that turn into really hyper specific roles. And we're kind of moving away from the old thunder and lightning pass catching back and early down back. But to me, I really struggle with two different things in this backfield. First is the idea that Chris Rodriguez gets the valuable goal line early down role, Allen gets the passing role, and you're stuck with Tutin of basically has to run it in from the 20-yard line. Otherwise, he's not going to be able to touch the ball again when it gets down to the red zone. Getting stuck in kind of that in between the 20s type area for Tutin with limited passing upside, that concerns me. The other part of it is what we see with Liam Cohen. I think with handful of these really, really sharp offensive minds is sometimes they design these run plays because they're building on what the next play is. And so it's more important to get the 2.5 yards in the exact hole that Liam Cohen is expecting that play to go into, because he's worried about setting the defense up for that next play in his succession of the plays that he's built out, versus Tootin kind of being a little bit more of the, if they lose 2 yards here, does that blow up the entire series that they're trying to set up? And so those two things I struggle to reconcile with.
I agree with that. I know a couple of our colleagues, the great Dave Kluge and the even greater Zygmunt Bloom. No offense, Dave, he's just been around longer. They both are, kind of like, they're concerned. Rodriguez, known for his power between the tackles, as you said, is going to be a little bit of an issue. Tootin has had fumble issues that could drop him out of favor if they arise. And I think the connection with Cohen, I know Kluge has mentioned that in articles he's written as well. So I think those are all factors. But again, I think the pricing is right on all three of these guys. If you had a feeling or a desire to go in any direction, I don't think I'd talk you out of that. And that includes a Clint Allen, who, I'm out there doing best balls. He's a great late run, last round. Him and Travis Hunter are guys you get in the last round free square plays in that Jacksonville offense. It's going to be very productive. But you're taking your chances, obviously, with the guy that's.
Are you buying at all the talk that they were aggressive for Jadarian Price in the draft, that they wanted to make that move? And really kind of, is it the possibility that they fall in love with a running back early in 27 and they just nuke this whole thing and they draft their next franchise running back?
I think that's entirely possible. I mean, there's the Jadarian Price, probably, it's irrelevant. They didn't get him just any more than the Giants didn't get Jeremiah Love or the Titans did. I mean, and who knows how much those teams were in on those players. From what we're hearing about the Cam Scadaboo chatter coming out of New York from John Harbaugh on Monday, even was pretty positive. So I don't know how in tune they were with that, but I do think that I think any backfield that has this level of ambiguity right now is a candidate to be blown up in 2027.
Exactly.
I talked to Matt Wallman earlier today, and it just kind of got a first taste of the 2027 running back class, and he's very impressed. So there will be some players coming that will make some changes.
All right, let's move to Washington. Rachaad White, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, and Katron Allen. Jeremiah Ford is there as well. Rachaad White sitting at running back 40 in dynasty value, Krosky-Merritt running back 33, Allen running back 49. In redraft ADP, White is running back 25, Krosky-Merritt running back 40, and then Allen running back 59. That 25 is not right. I think that's a remnant of something. A wrong number got pulled there. But all right, I think it's closer to 40. Actually, 39 when I looked.
I think
we'll go with 38.
Yeah, I think that is.
So I know from listening to your show that you did, the fantasy hot seat with Armando, that you're leaning towards White having that passing down role. I'm there with you on that. And I think that's starting with the known in this, White taking that passing down role. Do you see this as a situation that White can take the full role, or do you see this as, like we saw last year, we just got done talking about Chris Rodriguez with Krosky-Merritt, and we had Jeremy McNichols, again, one of those messy three-headed committees?
Our guy Bill, Krosky-Merritt, just never quite lived up to the hype. I know I've talked to people who cover that team closely, some of them responsible for some of the hype, Ben Standig being one. And I thought he made a pretty good argument into the season as to why Krosky-Merritt wasn't maybe living up to expectations. He thought the injuries across the offense were a problem, and maybe all the pieces had been in place, we would have seen more. And instead, we saw 2 games of the things that people saw every day in OTAs. I've seen Rachaad White on Sundays do the job, right? And it wasn't that long ago, a couple of years ago, at running back 4 outcome. And so you get the receiving floor at the price you're getting it. I think that role is pretty much locked in for him. And the possible upside of it, or the possibility of him actually winning the job. He's a very good runner, great relationship with Jaden Daniels going back to their time in college, and they've kept their friendship together. So look, I'm not down on Krosky-Merritt. I've just not been as high on him as the hype. I just think you look at the draft capital expended on him, and I mean, there were signs, right? I mean, the trading away Brian Robinson Jr. tells you that didn't happen by accident, right? They thought they had something, and I think everyone there who watched Krosky-Merritt thought they had something. People who saw him against the Chargers last year think, yeah, maybe there is something, but we haven't seen it consistently. We know White is capable of doing consistent production week in, week out. It was 2023 that he was running back four. But just as a pass catcher alone, right? He's the only back in the NFL with 40 plus catches in each of the past four seasons. 89.1% career catch rate, the best in NFL history among players with 100 targets. He's good at that part. So I would expect he's be valued. He'd be my target. You know, taking the price into account, but also kind of not taking the price into account. But also, probably I'm going to have way more Katron Allen than I am Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt.
Absolutely. I'm completely there with you on Katron Allen. I'm seeing him land in round 17, round 18 in underdog drafts. I really like, especially the other running backs relative to Allen's value right at the tail end of the draft. If I'm looking to add one more running back, I like him a lot better than the other guys on the board
Yep.
simply because of the ambiguity in this situation. White, to some level, is the poster child for like running back efficiency metrics because with that year that you're
Right.
talking about, the efficiency was horrible because he was getting hammered by baseball bats every single day. And then the next year comes in and he's got a running back that he can share some time with. And all of a sudden he looks shot out of a cannon. I think Tony Pollard's another example of that. When Tony Pollard was with Ezekiel Elliott in Dallas, it was the explosion with Pollard was next level. Then he goes and is the lead guy and the only guy. And it just looked like he was running in quicksand half the season. It's something real there, but I do like the approach there on White. I think he's going to be the one to return immediate value, but I'm completely with you on Allen being that later play. Also worth remembering too, Krosky-Merritt did not play college football in 2024,
Right.
so he was coming off of a
One
really,
game at Arizona that last
yeah, it
year.
was a weird situation. But Denver next up, Jacoby or J.K. Dobbins, Jonah Coleman, and R.J. Harvey. Dobbins, running back 36. Coleman, running back 39. Harvey, running back 29. ADP in redraft. Dobbins, running back 36. Coleman, running back 50. Harvey, running back 30. This is one, and I'm curious if you're there with me. It's almost the inverse of the Washington situation, where I feel very confident that J.K. Dobbins has the rushing on lock. And the guy that I'm avoiding is the guy that has the most value, that the highest value here. I'm not taking RJ Harvey at all. To me, it seems like RJ Harvey had ample opportunity last year, and all you're hearing is how frustrated they are with kind of what they ended up with there. But are you same place? Are you viewing this backfield differently?
We see this the same, and I know there are people out there that are going to say J.K. Dobbins is hurt all the time. Don't disagree. Also, when he's not hurt, he's very
Yeah.
good. Last year, he was running back 18 through 10 games, well ahead of Harvey, who you mentioned. The inefficiency of the rushing attack suddenly, when Dobbins went down in week 10, became a noticeable thing. It forced shifts in the offense. Some would argue that, asking Bo Nix to run more was a result of that. Maybe that's what weakened the ankle, whatever. I mean, everyone's going to have their take on that. But I think just the J.K. Dobbins portion of this is, for me, very easy. He's a very good running back. I know Matt Waldman and I have talked about this a fair amount. He's not the guy Baltimore drafted. He's not him anymore. But he's very good and more than capable touchdown scorer. So I do think the way Sean Payton wants to run this offense, they want to set things up with the run. They were able to do that through 10 games last year, and then less so. I think the Dobbins injury issues or why we see Jonah Coleman there. But those are the two backs I'm interested in there. It is Dobbins, who I have a ton of in best ball, who I took in a dynasty startup just recently at the right price, right? I mean, it's just cheap. People are down on
Yeah.
him. Again, it's a 1 year rental at this point, in dynasty terms. But what I might get in this 1 year, I'm pretty comfortable with given the price. And I think Coleman is the long-term play to me. More than Harvey. I mean, Harvey was great. He's a good asset. He's a good receiver. Does the touchdown luck hold up? He had a lot of that last year. I'm just not sold on him, and I don't know that Sean Payton is either.
We end up with it's the three-headed backfield with Peyton. It's the running back that gets all the rushes but no passes. It's the running back that gets all the pass opportunities that we wish had a little bit of rushes, and then it's the running back that gets a little bit of both but not enough of either. And I think that
Right.
it's how that one breaks down. But I think this is a good point to kind of and I think we naturally in fantasy football we're looking for ceiling, we're looking for upside, and I think so often we're hoping that one of these backfields breaks hard for one of these guys. In reality, that's not really how to play these types of backfields. You're looking for these types of players of, if you're in a zero RB build, these are the guys that kind of get you through those bye weeks or the early season to get some floor of points. Or if you're, if you've got two stud running backs, maybe this is your running back three, that if you have a bye or an
Right.
injury pops up. And so I do think it's so much of what I see geared towards conversation of like, well, which one is going to emerge? And it's like, well, they're all going to play. All these guys are going to have roles. And so I think that's one thing that's complicated about some of these ambiguous backfields.
I think there's so when we're looking for clues in these cases, one of the clues you look at is the circumstances around where the players, how the players showed up. R.J. Harvey drafted, highly drafted a year ago, and then J.K. Dobbins brought in long after they got a good look at R.J. Harvey through the entirety of OTAs and minicamp. It was that late in the process that they brought J.K. Dobbins in, and then as you saw him take over as the immediate starter, that told you a lot right there. The team's desired outcome is pretty apparent. They would like J.K. Dobbins to be the lead back. They like Harvey. I looked just looking at the numbers here. Harvey averaged 3.4 yards per carry, taking over as the number one, right, from week 10 on. He had 1.86 yards per attempt after contact, ranked 23rd out of 30 backs with 80 carries last year. Just he wasn't getting it done. And again, this is why Coleman's there. And if I'm drafting two Broncos, it's Coleman is my handcuff. I think he's the insurance. I don't think that he cuts into what Harvey does, right? I don't think he's going to be that guy. But if something happens to Dobbins, he's going to have a more prominent role.
Yeah, he strikes me as the Tyler Batty role where he's going to get passing down work, and that was one of the things at the combine. He talked about how much he valued pass protection out of the running back role, and then yes, you're exactly right there. Be the ability to handle volume. Why do you think Harvey has the higher ADP right now? If it seems like so many of us kind of are landing in the same spot.
Not everyone who drafted him last year. Those who did probably aren't spending as highly on him. Maybe they are. I've just not been in on him all along. But I think like a lot of his cachet last year came just from the draft capital invested in. People were drafting him highly based on that draft position. And look, we know, we're looking for these edges. And if we've been playing for any amount of time, we know that teams tell the truth a couple times. And one of those times is with draft, when they spend draft capital and when they spend cash, right? So I think that's the appeal of Harvey. I mean, like I don't know, you study the rookies much more closely, but I don't know, what were the expectations going into last year that made him such a dominant force in drafts. I mean, he was going way early in drafts last year. I think people have dialed back this year, but I have not seen him go after J.K. Dobbins in a single draft this year.
I think it was the explosion in the athletic testing, and then really projecting in the ability to contribute in the passing game. And I think when the lights came on in the passing game, he wasn't developed in that area. And a lot of what he was running at UCF was it was a lot of RPO type of action, really kind of a delayed option almost is what a lot of what out of a spread. It was a lot of what he was running, and it's kind of designed to either the quarterback's going to take it up the middle or pitch to him on the perimeter. And that was about what he was asked to do. And so I think it was, and I think that is one of the sobering realities of, I love doing the rookie guide and it's so much fun, but then the lights come on and half these guys can't play. And that is like the difficult thing to deal with every single year, especially in Dynasty.
Yeah, I think we kind of learn like, the difference in the level of talent is in college is maybe 5%, 10%, between players. At the NFL level, everyone's about a 0.5% away from each other, right? And that really separates the true players, but it's hard to see until they get out on the field with that level of competition. But I do think running backs is the place where you can get these guys, who come in who maybe don't have that high end profile, but can make a ton of hay. Because why we've seen it 1,000 times over the course of the many years of playing fantasy football, running backs can come out of nowhere. So so that's maybe why we like, a guy like Jonah Coleman or some of these guys we're drafting later, or LaQuint Allen. I mean, what's the list? I'm going to go back in time. 1999, Olandis Gary, Mike Anderson did it a couple times with Denver and Los Angeles. Dominic Davis with the Houston Texans, Nick Goings in Carolina, Steve Slayton in Houston. A lot of these guys for Houston. Peyton Hillis Remember when he made the Madden,
Yeah.
the front of the Madden, Arian Foster, Justin Forsett with the Ravens in 2014, CJ Anderson again with did it. I mean, these guys, David Johnson came out of nowhere in 2015 to have one of the great seasons. Alex Collins in Baltimore. I mean, these are not household names, right? So I think I think there's reason to believe that that some of these backs that maybe we're drafting late or whatever you want to stash them on your dynasty roster, there's plenty of reasons for hope that they can come through and deliver with the right circumstances.
We know our friends Joey Wright and Dave Kluge are big fans of physical media. And when I was visiting Dave and Joey was along in Denver for the draft, we went to a secondhand media store and I was just perusing and I found a stack of old Madden games. And it's like, here's Drew Brees and here's Calvin Johnson and here's Peyton Manning. Oh, and here's Peyton Hillis on the cover of this. And it
Yes.
was very, very funny at the time. Minnesota up next. Jordan Mason, Aaron Jones, Damon Claiborne, Mason, running back 55, Jones, running back 50, Claiborne, running back 61, redraft ADP, Mason, running back 41, Jones, running back 39, Claiborne, running back 67. We had some recent news from the Vikings beat where it seemed to be a lot of positive steam towards Jordan Mason. I think that instinctually,
Yes.
when you look at the skill sets, you can see Mason comes in and smashes things, and then Jones is a lighter back, and so is Claiborne. So it would track that this might be more of that traditional two-headed committee with Mason handling the in between and Jones in the passing and his experience. And Claiborne is the really intriguing, exciting one that we want to wait and see on. How do you see this breaking down? Are you targeting one of these players over the other?
In Dynasty, I'm targeting Claiborne like
Yeah.
crazy. He might be my most drafted rookie running back this year because the price is right. Obviously, it's part of it, but also he seems like a guy who Kevin O'Connell can get something out of. Drafted late, but I mean, he's super quick. His nickname is Lightning, so that tells you something. I think this is a kind of player that can come in and be like kind of that, you know, I don't want to say gadget player, right? Because I think that's too much. But I think he can come in and play an interesting role. Maybe we see Xavier Thomas doing that in Chicago as well at some point, even in the backfield. But when you've got an aging superstar in Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason, who, like, I think he's better than just a guy, but he seems like just a
Yeah.
guy, right? Like the numbers, if you pay close attention, he's probably better than you think, but he doesn't have the big time explosive burst that would set him apart. But super serviceable between the tackles. So he did he forced the second highest missed tackle rate last year. So there's something to be said for him. I think all these guys are priced right except Aaron Jones, who I've kind of lost interest in. I was kind of a supporter last year, or at least an investor last year. Probably less so. Probably almost no interest in him in Dynasty right now.
Yeah, I completely there on Dynasty, and it to me, especially like the Mason, the Rodriguez, the Dobbins are interesting in best ball, especially if you're in a best ball format with half PPR, because I really think you can either do a hero running back build and kind of have these guys as a
Right.
stable running back too, or if you want to do a zero running back build and kind of have these guys up here and maybe like a Ray Davis or somebody like that later if it breaks in the direction for the playoffs. But between kind of rolling them out and getting a touchdown per week, because we do expect all these offenses to be very good offenses. And in a managed league, it might be a little bit more frustrating to try to have that play because the reality is you could be looking at 5.8 points very, very easily. But at the same
Yes.
time, if you're again best ball to be able to have the one that gets the touchdown hitting your lineup, that could be really, really beneficial.
I just want to say, like, I think you look at an offense that's likely going to have a new starting quarterback. We'll see about that. But having an efficient runner to keep the offense on schedule, whether it's Kyler Murray or JJ McCarthy, and like I've been all in on Kyler Murray all along, but just recent reporting it makes you a little uneasy about that or whatever. Like, look, you're not paying for Kyler Murray, so and neither are the
Yeah.
Vikings, by the way, so that helps them as well. But I do think having a super efficient guy who can keep the offense on schedule and that's going to be Mason on the early downs.
The Vikings make me nervous on the Kyler Murray front because I think that Kyler Murray and I talked about this on the last episode with Heath Cummings, but the range of outcomes from Kyler Murray is basically he could be the fantasy running or quarterback one overall in that offensive structure if he gets back to running the way he did before, or the bench. And I think that the Vikings, if you were to hook them up to True Serum, whatever it might be, they would desperately love JJ McCarthy to just come in and win the job and be their franchise quarterback and to not even think twice about it. And maybe they flip Kyler Murray as the season comes on or something like that. That's probably their preferred outcome if it were to play that direction. And so that's where it makes it really, really dicey on Kyler Murray in fantasy, just because this could be the guy that shifts leagues, or you just burn a pick here on when there's really other good quarterbacks on the board at his ADP. Seattle. So this is, I think it's, I was kind of convincing myself with Brian Flores coming in and seeing Christian McCaffrey and seeing the impact and then seeing Jadarian Price in the first round that this one might trend a little bit more towards one of those situations where a clear running back emerges. And then everything that they are saying is no, nope, that's not going to happen. You got Jadarian Price, you got George Halani, you've got Emmanuel Wilson, you've got maybe Zach Charbonnet. Price is sitting at running back 18, Halani running back 80, Wilson running back 81, Charbonnet running back 38, ADP on redraft 26 for Price, Halani 73, Wilson 60, Charbonnet 45. For me, the concerning thing here is hypothetically, if we're to play this out, and you've got Jadarian Price and he were taking the passing down reps, and then you could get the healthy Zach Charbonnet back in here, and we do have that thunder lightning approach. But it seems like George Halani is the guy that they really like. And if George Halani is going to be that nominal, the Quint Allen, the passing down, are we going to get stuck with Jadarian Price kind of in the like the basically the rich man or the poor man's version of this Jacksonville backfield, where maybe Wilson's playing some early down, Halani's getting some passing down, and Price is stuck in the no man's land between?
Like we got stuck with Kenneth Walker the third. We were paying for the high side last year, and the role just never materialized. The expected role never
Until the
materialized
Super Bowl when we couldn't put him in our
until
fantasy
the Super
lineups.
Bowl. Correct. I think that's going to be something we're all leery about. I do think right now I think the prices are fair. But I know I've talked about this with Matt Waldman. Matt Waldman is convinced that Halani could end up being the lead back. I think that Zach Charbonnet, there has been some recent optimism based on some comments by Mike McDonald and the fact that he's back on the field doing some movements. I'm not expecting him back soon, right? Like, I know there's been some really wildly optimistic predictions for him. I do not think they will come true. I think we see him in November. If we see him sooner, good on him. Like right now, I look at the prices. Jadarian Price is too expensive for me, right? Running back 26. I just don't know what this was going to be. I probably will get some exposure to him in Dynasty. I'll probably take the chance on him. But beyond that, I'm looking at right now. I think it's Halani, and like I'm not keen. I'm probably not drafting Charbonnet very much just because I'm not sold that he was going to be back soon. I'm just not. And if somebody drafts him ahead of me and they beat me in a championship, I will shake their hands and congratulate them for that. It's probably Halani, and I think it's easy to overlook Emmanuel Wilson as well when he's been given opportunities. Honestly, this is not an appealing backfield to me, just in general.
I hear you. And I think it's interesting. The idea of the Super Bowl hangover, and Dave Kliege and I were talking about this on our divisional preview that we just released last Friday with Seattle. And I tend to think that the reason why we see these Super Bowl hangovers is because the team realizes how long that season is to get to the Super Bowl. And they also think they're a pretty good team. So they kind of probably make some decisions in the early season to try to preserve guys. And then inevitably the NFL is a razor thin margin league, and you drop some games because maybe you were preserving some guys, and you kind of get yourself into a place where no, actually we have to put the gas down here and we have to play our really good guys. And I think that that's probably, if you're in on Jadarian Price, that might be the best case that you're hoping for in the Seattle backfield to basically maybe they start the year thinking we're really good, we're going to roll through the play, we want everybody healthy, and then maybe they realize, hey, we drafted this guy in the first round, he's clearly better than the other options, we probably should be giving him the football, and it breaks that direction. I think that that's probably what you're hoping for at this point, since they're going out of their way to throw cold water on the idea that that might happen very early in the season.
It seems like they're willing to do that. What you talked about, the preservation. I think that was part of the case with Kenneth Walker when he got into, like up until training camp, every beat writer I talked to, and I talked to all of them. And like we go back to last February when Clint Kubiak showed up, Kenneth Walker's the guy. We want the ball in his hands every damn snap. They did not get the ball into his hands every damn snap because when training camp showed up, he couldn't practice every day. And that opened the door for Charbonnet to show what he could do. But also, it led them to probably go a little easier on Kenneth Walker in hopes that, hey, maybe he can be the Super Bowl MVP. Turns out that was a wise move on their part, but it didn't work for us. And so I just wonder if we're not going to see a similar approach to this backfield. Look, Jadarian Price may be way better than I realize, or way better than I expect, or way better given the opportunities that he didn't get at Notre Dame playing behind Jeremiah Love. I don't think he's run for more than 750 yards in a season. And, the receiving bandwidth has been very narrow. Look, I've seen other receivers who they didn't catch the ball in college. Well, they didn't throw him the ball in college, right? Leonard Fournette ended up being a pretty darn good receiving back. You wouldn't have known that from his time at LSU. And I think they threw him 7 balls, right? So, I think there's some room here. Changing offense. Brian Flores going to come in, comes from the same tree, the Shanahan offense. So I don't know how massive of a change that's going to be, but I just don't know how much Price is going to contribute. And when you see a guy like George Holani, who came on when they needed him most and did a pretty credible job, and you hear the reps he's getting right now, makes you wonder.
Yeah, and I like Kalani a little bit more so our partner DraftKings has full PPR. I like Kalani kind of more as the 20th round pick there, as opposed to some other formats that are half PPR. I might lean a little bit more towards Wilson if you are throwing a late dart on one of these backs. Last one here for the ambiguous backfields we have before we jump into some other things. Tampa Bay's backfield. We've got Bucky Irving, we've got Kenneth Gainwell, we've got Sean Tucker. Bucky Irving sitting at running back 20 in our Dynasty trade value chart plus. Dan Hendry puts that together. It's awesome. I love that tool so much.
Yes.
And then Kenneth Gainwell, running back 41. Sean Tucker, running back 67. Pretty big spread here on these players. Redraft ADP running back 20 for Irving in that as well. Gainwell running back 34. And Tucker running back 58. I did the immediate reaction spotlight to Kenneth Gainwell when we did that free agency series that you were a key contributor to. And I covered Gainwell in that. And my initial takeaway was less that Gainwell has locked down the passing down role and more that they just want to make sure that they have more passing to the running back within the offense, because absent Bucky Irving, we've never seen them feel comfortable putting Sean Tucker in that role. And I'm curious because I can see it in, maybe I'm just trying to tell myself the story of still wanting to believe in Bucky Irving, but when it comes down to free agency, you've got some money to spend. Pittsburgh didn't want to let Kenneth Gainwell go, and you could easily see, we know the 26th draft, how that worked out with Jadarian Price, we just talked about, with Love at the top. Other than that, there was really nobody that went it with any sort of capital. A team getting into a bidding war with Pittsburgh as the other free agent running backs run off, and then all of a sudden that money gets a little bit higher than you expected it to be, but you got your guy. You were able to do the things you wanted to do. Do you think it's that, or do you think it's more Kenneth Gainwell is locked into the struggle passing down back role that he held in Pittsburgh, and Bucky Irving's not allowed to catch balls?
I don't know. Bucky Irving's a pretty good receiver too. Right. But also, and I have a blind spot for Bucky Irving, and I have all along. I never expected him to get enough of the workload until he did. And even then I remained skeptical. As a rookie, he ended up getting the workload. Maybe some of that's on Liam Cohen, right? But he's not a big guy. He's well under 200 pounds, but he's 192, 195, somewhere in that range. And last year he didn't hold up to the workload. And this year he comes in coming off off-season shoulder surgery. It's limited him through OTAs. I think he'll be fine. Todd Bowles threw a little bit of a scare into all of us saying, he'll be ready in summer, fall. And Jason Light had to come out and say, probably summer. And I think that's probably true. But you look at last year, I mean, Irving averaged 14 points per game. He was running back 18 on a points per game basis. Gainwell was running back 21 on a points per game basis, 13 points. I think I think this could be more of a split than people realize. Zach Robinson comes in as the offensive coordinator. I believe that was you who pointed out how much he's leaned heavily on his running backs in the passing game, but also it's been, pretty good split there. He's been more than willing to divide up the workloads for his running backs as well. So, uh, like, I'm not eagerly drafting either of these guys, but I'm probably drafting the cheaper one, and I hope I'm wrong about Irving, and I hope he is every bit as good as he was as a rookie. I'm just probably paying for other players at that same price level.
I think Baker Mayfield is the key player in this. And if you look back at the way that they used the running back in the passing game in 2024 relative to what they did in 2025, it really evaporated out of 2025. And I think to kind of what happened, I think that in 24, they had that comfortable dump off target. They activated Irving in that role. They had White in that role, and Baker wasn't trying to do too much, probably as some of it, and he was taking what was available when he did run it. And then I think in 25, he probably started to do a little bit too much. So I do think that they really wanted to get back to involving the running back in the passing game. But to me, it's really hard to take what Gainwell did in Pittsburgh and move that forward, because that was a broken offense, and Aaron Rodgers basically just forced the ball to him because he couldn't get the ball downfield towards the end of the season. And you don't want your offense to do that. You don't want an NFL offense to look like that. So the idea that they're going to bring Gainwell in and he's going to get 7 targets per game out of the backfield seems a little bit far-fetched to me. But
Also fair to remember that Gainwell was nothing until he was something, and it wasn't until last year he had 4+ seasons of not much in Philadelphia. So I'm with you there, and Irving has clearly done it. I don't like the pricing. Don't like him in Dynasty just because Irving. Just because he is undersized, and I wonder how long he will hold up to the workload. And I, again, hope he proves me wrong and makes me look ridiculous for worrying about him.
do you like Tucker at all? Because I think it's interesting.
I have, but we've seen the big games a couple of years ago against New Orleans, had the monster output. I mean, we know what he's capable of. We remember him coming out, probably would have been a draft pick had he not had the heart condition. Coming into the league, the Buccaneers still thought enough of him to give him, I think, that year the highest cash, highest bonus of any player coming in of the undrafted free agent. So they think something of him. They kept him. You don't sign Gainwell and re-sign Tucker if you feel really great about Bucky Irving. I think that's for sure. But also, they've never seemed to trust him to give him an extended look, or he doesn't get an opportunities when everyone else is healthy. So I think, sometime at some point, great fantasy lesson for everybody. Whatever we think of a player, we're thinking about based on a very narrow band of what's going on. The teams are around these players every minute of every day, almost year round. They probably, when somebody's not getting the playing time that you think he should get, it's probably because he's not earning the playing time. So if he was anywhere remotely capable, he would be on the field. It's just they're not seeing it. So I just think the roll up to this point, it's been only what kind of almost an emergency break glass type play, and I don't know if that's going to suit us as fantasy players.
I think one of the struggles in what we do and just fantasy football in general is it's very easy to find the things that tell you the story that you want to believe, and it's a whole lot harder to read what's out there and build the story that way. And that's really where reading what the coaches are telling you, reading the trends in that, and not deciding before you read all the things and then kind of piecing it together, I think is one of the more difficult things to walk there.
That's my thing. What do we do as fantasy players? We tell ourselves happy stories about the guys that we want to draft, and we tell ourselves horror stories about the guys that we think aren't gonna fare well. And we tend to overstate the case no matter what to get that confidence up, or to get the resolve up not to draft somebody we've sworn off. And so I think that's a big part of playing fantasy, and it's one of the great parts of playing fantasy. But it's mostly great when the stories you tell yourself come true.
All right. I could never do this as good as you, Bob, and it's great to have you here. But introducing the 2026 Football Guys Draft Guide. It feels unfair to call this a magazine. Fantasy domination in your hands. You don't just play fantasy football, you play to win. That's why we're back with the second edition of the Football Guys Premium Draft Guide, a beautifully designed, collector worthy guide packed with expert analysis, cheat sheets, and proven strategies to give you the edge this season. For 25 years, we've been the secret weapon behind championship teams. We've helped hundreds of thousands of managers win their leagues, and now we've distilled thousands of hours of expert research to our top performing projections into one powerful format. Your complete guide for crushing your league in your hands. Last year, the draft guide itself was everything we hoped it would be, and the FSWA agreed, naming it the best publication of 2025. This year, every pre-ordered draft guide comes with a free, trackable USPS priority mail shipping. You know when your guide ships, where it is along the way, and when it will arrive. Pre-order now, $24.95 regular price. $29.95 ships in mid-July. We're coming up to mid-July before we know it. And here, this next part is, I've got it labeled rapid fire. Really, we have some time to breathe if you do want to dive into any of these topics. But first off, is the David Montgomery role dead? We see the so much talk about the David Montgomery role, and Isaiah Pacheco's in the David Montgomery role. And to me, I think it swings both ways on Jahmyr Gibbs just taking over that backfield last year, but also the pre death declaration of David Montgomery. I think David Montgomery is in a great spot in Houston. What do you say about the David Montgomery role?
The David Montgomery role in Houston is one I'm going to be investing heavily in, including in Dynasty as a one-year rental. We saw what Joe Mixon did with that role upon his arrival. Was 10th running back 10 in points per game. The talk, Aaron Wilson reporting this week, the discussion is, they're going to make him the focal point of a smash mouth off. And why wouldn't you? Why would you not run that offense? Why would you not want to run heavy offense? They threw the ball out last year, right? It wasn't super effective, but enough to keep the fantasy receivers we're interested in going. But I think putting together a strong rushing attack, and I think when they will look what happened to them against New England and the Patriots and then the playoffs, they could gain no ground. So I think we're going to see a ton of David Montgomery, but his role diminished. So, shifting that over the Isaiah Pacheco portion of the program. I don't see the same thing from Isaiah Pacheco. I have not seen Isaiah Pacheco that everyone loves since his rookie year. He's been riding on that steam all along. He just hasn't been the same guy, and injuries have been a factor in that. Detroit, maybe a fresh start is great for him. I don't know how much he'll see the field. I think the issue for me is that role is being diminished by the ascent of Jahmyr Gibbs. It's hard to take him off the field, just like it's hard to take Christian McCaffrey off the field if you're the San Francisco 49ers. Just like it's hard to take Jonathan Taylor off the field if you're the Indianapolis Colts. It just doesn't make sense. And so I think we're going to see an awful lot of Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think we'll see very little of Isaiah Pacheco. Might grab him as a handcuff if I have Gibbs. I think that's to me the value. David Montgomery, on the other hand, I think he's just priced perfectly. The tail end of the running back twos. I think you'll get that running back two production every single week and have weeks of running back one production. So whether it's a short-term dynasty buy or a redraft buy or best ball buy, I'm perfectly fine with him staying away from Pacheco other than as a handcuff.
I think the David Montgomery role is occupied by Kyle Monangai in Chicago with the guy that made the David Montgomery role. But that I do. So that Aaron Wilson piece, this drives me crazy because Aaron Wilson wrote this really good article and he had great comments from the coaching staff, great comments from Montgomery about how excited they are with David Montgomery being a feature back, a 3-down back. And David Montgomery's like, I'm going to be involved in the passing game. I'm excited for it. And at the very end, Aaron Wilson is a very good writer and he knows that his readers will ask a follow-up. What about 2025 starter Woody Marks? And so Aaron Wilson writes in this, like, Woody Marks is probably going to be in a passing role. But that gets aggregated into, and it turns into people saying Woody Marks is in the passing role, David Montgomery's in the early down role. And this entire article that's about David Montgomery being a feature 3-down back from one sentence at the very end turns into, this is a committee.
So Aaron did another article about Woody Marks based on those comments. And I think you got to pay close attention when you're hearing coaches comment on players, especially players who you don't expect to be frontline players. Sometimes it's the question, right? They're asked about Woody Marks. Well, you're going to say, well, he kind of sucked last year, so we're happy we have David Montgomery, so we don't have to see so much Woody Marks. No, He's not going to say that. What he's going to say is, man, Woody Marks does some really good things, and we're going to try and work that into the offense. And they mean none of it. And we see this time and time again. It's what the questions asked. And you're right, Aaron Wilson. I've been talking to him since going back to his days in the Carroll County Times, covering the Baltimore Ravens. He's been a great inside reporter. He gives great, and he knows what we're after as fantasy investors. And I think he nailed it on the David Montgomery portion, but also reported fairly on the Woody Marks, because we have the running backs coach / assistant head coach making really positive comments. But we've seen those comments before. Zach Robinson, what was it? Upon arrival in Atlanta, we get into July. Oh, well, Tyler Algiers, we're going to have to get him on the field. Well, why would he say that? Because it's not going to happen unless something happens to Bijan Robinson. Well, he's going to say that because he was asked that question. You have to pay attention when you go out and you follow up on these stories and you see a headline or you see an aggregated piece. Maybe go find the source and figure out what was said. A lot of times you can find the whole interviews available on YouTube. It's not that hard. It's worth your while.
Yeah. So the other part of it too, I think David Montgomery actually being able to hit the hole will make that offensive line look a whole lot better, as opposed to Woody Marks running into the back
Yes.
of the first offensive lineman he sees. But that's
It was not good against the Patriots.
Yes.
Not good.
Yeah. What about zero RB? I see people say zero RB is dead because the prices of running backs have risen. And to me, that's exactly why zero RB exists, because now that the
Right.
prices of running backs rise, now I can get all my elite wide receivers and my top end quarterback and fill this in for running back at the end there. Are you in the same place here? Are you comfortable
I'm
doing
old.
zero RB?
I'm old and I come from a running back heavy era when I started playing fantasy football, in the 80s. That's, I mean, that was the era of true feature backs. We've learned to adjust, but I still probably think I lean more hero than zero. But the hero could even be like if I'm waiting until the third, maybe the fourth round, if I get lucky and get a Cam Scatterbo as my first back, I'm perfectly fine with that. I do think there's depth into the fourth round of drafts or quality starters. And if I get one of those guys, and then I can take my chances later with a lot of these ambiguous guys we're talking about. And there's some we didn't talk about. I mean, I think Jonathan Brooks, you're going to see a ton. I know Kluge's all about that. I've been all about that, except in leagues where I'm with Kluge, where he's more all about it than I am. But I mean, you're buying something sight unseen, and the price is rising, so you got to be concerned with that. But I think playing on the ambiguity of the position and the possibility of that whole list of players that I named, which was a totally incomplete list of over the last 20 years, guys who have come out of nowhere to put up dominant seasons. It happens every year. So be prepared for that. And so take your chances. I think it's perfectly fine as long as you're landing quality players in those spots. But I'm seeing way more this year, way more. I saw it with Mike Dempsey, my colleague, my Sirius colleague, this last Friday. We're doing this Bender Sirius Independence Day draft. Drafted 3 running backs in his first 4 picks.
Yeah.
In a league that you have to start 2 tight ends. I mean, I think I'm seeing way more people go running back heavy early than I am seeing 0 running back.
Yeah, and I don't know. I could do an entire like 45 minutes an hour show on zero RB, just because I think it's so many people hear it, and so they just don't draft running backs, and that's not what zero RB is. Zero RB is
Right.
similar to our value-based drafting principles. It's another offshoot of that. But
Or as Matt Waldman called it when he first wrote about it 20 some years ago, upside down drafting.
Yeah, exactly. All right, this is one that I just updated my dynasty rankings. You'll be thrilled to hear that, Bob. I did a deep, thorough scrub of my dynasty rankings, and I have brand new rankings up on the site. One of the things that stood out to me while doing that, Chase Brown, running back 13 on Keep Trade Cut. Javonte Williams is running back 20. How crazy am I for thinking that they should be much, much closer, considering their ages are very similar, their offensive structures are very similar, and Javonte Williams is signed for 3 years in Dallas, whereas Chase Brown is going into a contract year, said he wants to remain in Cincinnati. Cincinnati has never been proactive on contracts.
Yeah, I think dynasty wise, I mean, if you're splitting hairs at that level, one of the hairs you're going to split is, Jaden Blue figured things out and maybe he's gaining some maturity. Maybe he can nibble at the edges of Javonte Williams' workload. I still don't see anybody in Cincinnati doing that to Chase Brown. But I mean, all things being equal, given the pricing right here, I think Javonte Williams is being wildly underrated. He was running back 12 last year. What's materially changing about this offense? Nothing. In a lot of this, he has to get the same red zone looks that he got last year. He got a ton of them, but offensive coordinator they brought in last year, Clayton Adams, a run game, a run oriented guy. Brian Schottenheimer, obviously not afraid to throw the ball, but I think the focus on the run is something I really like. It 19 opportunities a game, double digit touches at all 16 games, 62 red zone touches, fifth among running backs, 51 targets, ranked 11th, so he can catch the football. I think Williams is being wildly disrespected this year, and not wildly, but at least somewhat disrespected, and maybe we're just giving we're putting too much on the other side of the equation there, maybe more than we should.
Yeah, we develop our favorite players, and in the fourth round, I'm always hoping for to see Javonte Williams or Malik Neighbors or Josh Jacobs in the fourth round when I'm doing these
For
best balls
sure.
now because it just feels like a treat to be able to get them
You're
there.
seeing it too. Jacobs for sure. I mean, I was almost going to be waiting for you there. So I
And then I'm
appreciate that
I'm
as
praying
well.
for David Montgomery or Jameson Williams coming back in round 5 is where I usually end up.
Love
But
it.
who's your favorite late round handcuff?
I've been drafting a lot of Brees Hall, so it's been Braylon Allen, but there are many. But I think Braylon Allen right now. I know like, I don't expect a lot of standalone value. I know the talk of we're going to use all those backs. No, they're not. They just paid Brees Hall $40-some million over the next 3 years. I think they're going to play Brees Hall, but I do think he is the handcuff there. Ray Davis is another good one
Yeah.
that's pretty widely overlooked that people just don't pay a lot of attention to. But I mean, there are more. I mean, I think for any of the top backs, I want to probably try and get the handcuff, especially there's different handcuffs, and when you get the handcuff, when you get the guys that people view as true plug and play, like if something happened to the starter, like I think Alexander Madison kind of had that reputation for a while. You pay a handcuff premium, and I don't want to pay the premium. I want guys who are outside that premium zone, but still have that possibility. I think you're all looking at the San Francisco backs because we know what that backfield kind of workload. None of those guys are going to be Christian McCaffrey, right? So you shouldn't expect a one for one replacement, and nor should you expect it for Bijan Robinson, nor should you expect it from Isaiah Pacheco. That doesn't mean you don't handcuff, but you should set realistic expectations.
All right. So this is another one of my bugaboos, but I believe Christian McCaffrey would be the clear 101 if he were 2 years
He would
ago
be
and we didn't have those
100%.
roller coaster memories from 2024. So I believe he's priced at his floor. I also believe Devon Achan is priced at his floor. That if we weren't
I agree.
so concerned about the offense, he would be in that 10, that top 6 or so, that firm tier that's kind of sitting at that top 5, top 6. Am I wrong on those?
You are absolutely correct on those. I've been a little more bullish on HN. I'm double checking my rankings right now because I think I might have dropped him a little bit just to better, like the tricky thing about ranking, I have him as running back 7. So I'm pretty much ahead of the field. I was looking at the draft we did last Friday. He was well into the second round. I want to say halfway into the second round. Some of the guys that went ahead of him, I think James Cook actually went after him. But so yeah, I think HN. I think people are overstating the case, right? Like so. Here's the thing, right? Like, do I want to draft a bunch of guys on bad offenses? No.
No.
Am I fine skimming the surface at the primary pieces? Yes, I'm perfectly fine with that. Every offense, there's going to be a piece there that you can count on, no matter what. He's going to get a ton of work. They just paid him to do a ton of work. I have high expectations for him. And like maybe like the numbers have been so phenomenal. Is there going to be a little bit of regression, or is a little regression possible? Sure, but I don't think the workload's going to diminish.
And there's some of these guys I think one of the most valuable things is doing league wide projections because there's some guys that they're just like
Right.
it's glaringly obvious. For me, Devon Achan is one. Terry McLaurin was one of like if there's anything to this using him like I'm on a St. Brown, this is a math problem at some point and we're playing a
I've
math game.
I've been doing a series of underrated by position, underrated players, and the players we're talking about in this segment are almost all included. I think I ended up not including McLaurin just because he's high end enough, but I think he is being vastly overlooked this year. He's not underrated, but he is overlooked this year for sure.
All right, I pulled a couple of dynasty trades about some of these key players that we talked about here out of Dan's tool. Travian Henderson or the 2026 104, which side do you got in Superflex?
I'll take the 104.
Okay. Rashad White, Isaiah Likely, and Nico Collins, or CeeDee Lamb.
I'm a piece away.
RJ Harvey and Bashal Tutin for Jerry Price in 2027 second.
I think I'll take the. Yeah, I'm not keen on any. I'm not keen on this. I'm going to go ahead and take. I'll take Price in the second. Just because I'm hoping it's something really exciting in 2027. And I just, I'm kind of out on Harvey, and I'm ambivalent enough on Bashal Tutin that I'll take the chance on Price and the optimism of the unknown a year away.
Awesome, Bob. Thank you so much for your time. What do you want to plug? What do you want to tell people you're doing or anything out there?
Go out and buy the draft guide. It's fantastic. A lot of effort went into it. Great articles by the entire staff. You're going to love the articles and all the projections. Jason Wood does such a yeoman's job of setting up the projections, running you through them, all that. So check all that out. Back on the Sirius XM radio now 5 nights a week, 8 to 10 with Mike Dempsey. Otherwise, fantasy notebooks coming out every week. We're kind of doing them in installments every day. A little piece coming out. Then if you like just to read the big piece on Sunday like I do, well, we do that too. So just watch for all that, the usual stuff going on. On the Hot Seat is out every Wednesday each week on the YouTube channel, on the Audible channel. So check that out as well.